Well, I can promise you that essentially this is going to make you like being in class a heck of a lot more than you're going to like listening to me on the YouTubes. Anyway, this is a lecture on Congress. You're welcome. You get to watch this over the weekend because really, who doesn't want to do that? Constitutional duties of Congress, because that is the unit we're doing. They have two main jobs. They pass laws. All right. They fund the government. That's two. I'm going to give you a couple others. They also confirm appointments that the president makes and approve treaties. These are the constitutional duties. There are other constitutional duties as well if you think about all the powers that are given to them, but those are really the enumerated powers. The actual job of Congress is to focus on passing laws and the things I mentioned before. Revenue, approving treaties, approving appointments of the president. A bicameral legislature, we've talked about this already. All bicameral means is that there are two houses. We have a House and we have a Senate. All right. So hopefully this is going to go smoothly. Hey, all right, it went simply. Okay, the basic difference between, I think, the House and the Senate that you have to consider is, before we talk about all the differences, is I want you to think about it this way. I used to teach at a small private school. It was called the Parkmont School, and I had, let's say, 8 to 12 kids in a class. And today in AP Government, I have 33, 34 kids in a class. I needed more rules in an AP Government class because I have more students. When I had 8 students, I really didn't need to make a lot of rules. So the House has 435 members, where the Senate has only 100 members. The House, as a result, has more rules that you need to for the members of the House to follow. As a result, the leader of the House, the Speaker of the House, is more powerful than the leader of the Senate, because if you have more rules, you have more power. You can, I mean, it's not like school where you're telling senators you can't text, or members of the House you can't text during a floor debate, but they have more rules about who's allowed to talk, when they're allowed to talk, and what have you. The Senate, because they have fewer rules, that makes the individual senator more powerful than an individual representative. They have fewer rules, and there's fewer of them. It is more prestigious to be a senator than it is to be a member of the House. All right, the basics. The basics are important facts that you need to know. A member of a House's term is 2 years long. Two. You have to be 25 years old to be a member of the House of Representatives. That means you guys don't qualify, and I do. All revenue bills. The only real power the House has is that any tax bill must start in the House of Representatives. Aside from that, all of the important powers belong to the Senate. An impeachment trial must begin in the House as well. It only takes a majority vote of the House for a president to be impeached. They still have to have a trial in the Senate. But to actually be impeached, we've had 2 presidents impeached, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton. No one has been removed from office. It only takes a majority vote in the House to be impeached. It takes 2/3 in the Senate to be found guilty. In the House, they have a Rules Committee. They don't have this in the Senate, and that's why we're bringing it up. In the Rules Committee, and I guess it's all the people in this room, me and the map, and I don't know, this Janis Joplin or something like that over there. I know nothing. Yeah, I totally lost myself. I hate these video lectures. Anywho, Rules Committee is basically in the House. They have a committee that decides how long people are allowed to talk on the House floor. They decide whether they're allowed to add amendments on the House floor, and they schedule legislation to be discussed and voted on. And if they choose they don't want something to be voted on, they don't schedule it. All right, specialization of members. Essentially what this is saying is, because there are 435 members of Congress and there's only roughly 20 committees, That means each representative is only on one committee. So they're super specialized. If you're from Nebraska and you're on the agricultural committee, that's great because they don't do anything in Nebraska other than agriculture. If you're from Nebraska, I don't mean any offense. I don't know much about the state. On the other hand, if you're from Nebraska and you end up on a committee, like science and technology, it might not be that relevant to your life. So the more experience you have, the more you get to pick your committee. Reelection rates. Because House districts are roughly 680,000 people per representative, that means that most of the House districts are safe seats, much like Jim Moran's seat. Moran could knock over a liquor store and he will still be elected to Congress. I mean, I suppose, I don't think that's likely to happen, but he is going to win this election. Jim Wolf, who is I think it's Jim Wolf anyway, who's a representative in Virginia. It's kind of the Potomac, McLean area, and then it leads into Loudoun County. He has been a representative for a long time as well, and he's also in a safe seat. Moran's seat has tons of Democrats. Wolf's seat has tons of Republicans. They're safe. They're going to be reelected. So the reelection rates for those who choose to run again are very high. Representatives get elected again and again. However, because they're not as powerful as other positions, many people choose to stop being a representative and instead they run for a better position. They become a governor. They become a senator. They run for president. I don't know. Or they start a business. They do something. They go to work for the federal bureaucracy. So the turnover is higher in the House of Representatives because there's 435 of them and there's better things for them to do. In the Senate, there's no position higher than a senator other than president. So Senate, they don't leave. In the House, they leave. But if you run again, chances are you've got a good chance of being reelected. Finally, there's something that exists in the House that doesn't exist in the Senate, and it's called a discharge petition. A discharge petition just means that, let's say there's a bill that's stuck in the Rules Committee because the Rules Committee hates the bill and they just choose to not schedule it, and so it never gets voted on. A discharge petition takes 218 members. That's a majority of 435, because half of 435 is 217 and a half, so it's 218. If there's a majority of signatures, and they get 218 signatures, the bill is kicked out of committee and it goes immediately to the floor. It's a detail, but it's one of the terms that A, you need to know, and B, probably going to be on the quiz. So next class you can ask me questions about this, and then we are going to have a quiz on Wednesday for periods 6 and 8 and Thursday for period 1. So again, the discharge petition, you sign the petition and it forces the bill out of the committee and it goes directly to the floor. It takes 218 votes, like I said. All right, Senate. The Senate is more, the Senate, like I said, is more powerful. The terms are longer. They're 6 years long. That means that you don't have to spend all your time trying to get reelected all the time, because in the House, they run every 2 years. Senate, once you're elected, you can relax. You have to be 30 years old, so I still qualify. You still don't. Advise and consent is an important power. Essentially what it is that every single appointment that the president makes, whether it is to the Supreme Court, a federal judge, or a cabinet position, the Senate has to approve that decision. It takes a majority vote to approve it. A treaty also must be approved by the Senate. So the House has no power over treaties, over advice and consent. You only need the Senate's approval. A trial, basically it says trials right there, conviction, it's talking about an impeachment trial. And in an impeachment trial, you need to have the 2/3 vote of the Senate to declare guilt and thus removal of office. So if you have 100 senators, that takes 67 senators to vote someone out of office. The trial is run by the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He is the judge, and then senators on each side are the main lawyers. Filibuster and cloture. Filibuster is something that exists only in the Senate, and in fact, it is not in the Constitution. It is the filibuster, but in many ways, that keeps the United States Congress from getting much done. The filibuster is essentially, today, it is if in the Senate, because there are fewer rules, a senator can talk as long as a senator chooses to. And a senator can stop debate and prevent a vote from occurring if the senator takes the floor and refuses to yield it. And they refuse to yield it by continuing to talk. So today, and then, okay, so you can basically continue to talk. That's happened a few times, a few senators. Generally, this was done in the 50s and 60s for civil rights legislation. Democratic senators from the South, the Northern Democrats supported civil rights, the Southern Democrats chose to get up and basically read the phone book to prevent a bill on civil rights from being passed. This is a big deal. I mean, basically it was used in legislation that the Southern Democrats hated, but it was only used for bills that they absolutely hated. Of course, their hatred was immoral, but that's not my point. Today, and so to end a filibuster, you need a vote of cloture. Basically, you need 60 votes to end the filibuster. So you can interrupt a senator, prevent them from reading the phone book or the encyclopedia or whatever it is they're going to read, or rant on for about hours and hours with a vote of cloture. This is important because that means to do anything in the Senate that you essentially need 60 votes. What both the Democrats did when the Democrats did under Bush, and what the Republicans are doing now under Obama, is they are not allowing legislation to be passed. They're threatening a filibuster so that the Democrats are not bringing forth, and the Republicans under Bush are not bringing forth legislation because they're threatening to filibuster it. And this has slowed down the pace of government and kept us from getting things done. When I say they are threatening to filibuster, what I mean is the minority party. So the Republicans under Obama are threatening to filibuster so the Democrats don't bring legislation. Under Bush, the Democratic minority was threatening to filibuster so the Republicans weren't able to bring in legislation. And it slows the whole process down. Lastly, the difference between the two is reelection rates. Reelection rates, essentially, we're talking that the senators are less likely to be reelected because in the House you can draw your boundaries to make safe seats. The boundaries in the Senate are set. They're the state boundaries. As a result, senators tend to be more moderate because there aren't safe seats, so you have to please a majority in the state. On the other hand, in the House, because you represent so few people, generally, that you can draw a small district that is very liberal or very conservative. And when you're able to do that, then you can get very liberal members and very conservative members of the House of Representatives. In the Senate, they tend to be more moderate because they have to appeal to the entire state. They can't move state boundaries and move the panhandle of Florida into Georgia. It just doesn't work. All right, well, these are the main differences between the House and the Senate. I hope you guys have taken notes. Please write down any questions that you guys have so that you can ask me.